Support Ukraine! Save Europe!
Support Ukraine! Save Europe!
Support Ukraine! Save Europe!
Support Ukraine! Save Europe!
Also, those countries, the much needy countries in the world, but moreover Ukraine. Ukraine is the breadbasket of the world. We established that, and eventually we found that as soon as Russia blockaded the Black Sea. Russia blockaded all the export ports from where all the grains were exported to the other countries. And those countries at the moment in a huge jeopardy of living in famine or starvation. If the world, if the free European leaders will continue to closing the eyes on what's happening in Ukraine. Russia will do everything they can because they already launched a hybrid war against West. They blame West for everything, while at the same time they align with Iran, Korea, China, Belarus. Korea say they haven't sent any military support to Russia, but there is a videos from Ukrainian soldiers showing that the armor bases that liberated in Kharkiv region have shells and the other weapons with the Korean language on. Same in China. Iran sending the unmanned planes, also helping Russia to commit genocide in Ukraine. Belarus allowing Russia to use their land as the air base, to use the land for all the Russian military equipment, and this is the further jeopardy that the Russians can re-attack Ukraine from north. So as Winston Churchill said back in the day, the worst fighting with the allies is fighting without them. Hence why all the political elite, all the journalists are now calling world to unite. They calling world to unite in unity of action and purpose, rather than in unity of empty promises. It's such a vital at this time, after so many days, so many months, and so many Ukrainian people being just unlawfully killed by Russia. It's such a vital to have that unity. Unity of actions and purpose. Unity of act right now, of act accordingly by moral and legal obligations that they have, and purpose of helping Ukraine push the occupants back, to helping Ukraine re-establish its territorial integrity as it was signed back in 1991. Back to the borderlines from 1991. Grain export issues, energy issues. People will die around the world if the world will not have this unity of action, if purpose, and if the world will not have proliferation of the green energy, and also if the world not do anything about proliferation of the military help to Ukraine. Russia, by By selling the energy, Russia getting the huge revenues from European leaders just to replenish their war machine, just so they can kill more Ukrainians. They killing people, they destroying infrastructure, they destroying the history, they destroying the culture, they trying to change already set history for many, many years. More than 600 people died. Innocent kids, sorry, I put not people, just innocent kids have been killed by Russian missile attacks on the cities in the close proximity to the war zones or far away from this war zone. Russia do not choose where they shoot. Russia do not choose where to shoot. From more than 28,000 missiles strike launched by Russia, only 300 were aimed in the Ukrainian military bases. All the more than 27,000, this is just the random missile strikes on Ukrainian nation, just to erase everything to the ground and leave the place uninhabitable for many, many generations. The acts that Russia committing in Ukraine, nothing different to the terror act. World should not hesitate, but in fact recognize Russia as a terrorist state. Russia is the terrorist state. Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state. Russia is the terrorist state. Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state. Russia is the terrorist state. Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state. Russia is the terrorist state. Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state.
Russia is the terrorist state. Russia is the terrorist state.
Russian war in Ukraine have only aimed to extinguish Ukraine as a whole Ukrainian nation. Russian missile strikes in Ukraine and the wide array and staggering war crimes and crimes against the humanity in Ukraine are at industrial scale. Russia doesn't choose where to shoot and who to kill. Russia just dealing the way they wanna deal. Completely bankrupt Russian soldiers have been once again mobilized a few days ago. Russia called its partial mobilization in aim to establish a amount of soldiers up to 1,200,000. And this is just because Russia wants to erase Ukraine. But it's not just only that, but it's also that Russia fighting this war like with imperialistic conquest of 19th centuries just to get more areas. This is the ambitions of the evil. This is the ambition of the one man. One man have decided and chosen to launch this war, to commit all these atrocious acts. Completely brainless, inhumane Russian freaks constantly killing Ukrainian independent nation, constantly destroying Ukrainian people even as we speak. Ukrainian front line extends over 2,500 kilometers, or the active front line is about 1,000 kilometers. It's a lot to hold just for one country if the world will decide to live for one country. But moreover, it's not just to hold the front line, but it's also to protect the future generation. The way Russia launching the airstrikes the way they committing, the wide array of the crimes that Russia committing at industrial scale in Ukraine, it's nothing else but the genocide of Ukrainian nation. Stop the genocide in Ukraine.
Stop the genocide in Ukraine.
Stop the genocide in Ukraine.
Stop the genocide in Ukraine. Stop the genocide in Ukraine. Stop the genocide in Ukraine. Stop the genocide in Ukraine.
Stop the genocide in Ukraine.
Stop the genocide in Ukraine.
Stop the genocide in Ukraine. Stop the genocide in Ukraine.
Stop the genocide in Ukraine.
Stop the genocide in Ukraine. Stop the genocide in Ukraine.
Stop the genocide in Ukraine.
Stop the genocide in Ukraine.
Stop the genocide in Ukraine. Stop the genocide in Ukraine.
Stop the genocide in Ukraine.
Stop the genocide in Ukraine. Stop the genocide in Ukraine.
When people purchasing Russian energy, they paying for it not in currency. They paying for it by the lives of Europeans alike themselves. They paying it by the lives of Ukrainians, free civilian people, people that have nothing to do with the war, people that they have no other choice but to defend their country. The thing is, Ukraine have nowhere to go. Russia have a choice, but Ukraine don't have a choice. Russia have started this war and Russia can stop it. It's a one man who started this war and one man that can stop this war. Because if Russia stops fighting, the war will end and the world will have stability and security like it had 7 months ago. But if Ukraine stops fighting, there will be no Ukraine. We won't see blue and yellow flags. People longer days ago, 7 months ago, walking in Ukraine, they were looking at the sky to find the blue sky between the clouds. But now, people walking in Ukraine, especially in the north, east and south in Ukraine, and looking high to find Ukrainian flag, to see what other city, what other parts, with hope that they are liberated, with hope to see Ukrainian flag. So if Ukraine stop fighting, Ukraine have no choice but to defend themselves. Ukraine have nowhere to go. One man who lived, who had a family, who built his house, who built his business, whatever he was doing, he was living in his free, democratic, independent country. And Russian freaks now trying to destroy that. Don't worry about the properties. Don't worry about that. Russia trying to take their families away. Russia trying to kill their women, their children, their parents, elderly parents. Lately findings from the liberation of Kharkiv region proven that the mass graves of people, after the exhuming them, they found that the smallest child that was raped and tortured and killed by Russia it's a girl, she was only 4 years old. And the oldest woman is 82 years old. What a freaks! What can do? How you can name them? Subsequent torture of people after tying their hands in the back at the back, and subsequently shooting them in the head as an execution, and then just bury them in the ground to hide their war crimes. It's beyond the belief. That's why we say and call the world. We've seen what's happening in Bucha, Irpin 4 months ago. And now, after liberation of Kharkiv region, we already seen how Russia acting. They have this pattern and they will not change. They had this pattern that all they do whenever they came, morally bankrupt people, they just kill. They just kill, erase everything to the ground. They rape people, they torture people. They install in the torture chambers just to torture people to their death and then bury them in the mass graves. This is the language of Kremlin evil. This is what only he understands. And that's why when I said Ukrainians don't have a choice and Ukrainians will stand right to the end until they can continue to live in a free democratic Ukraine, because they don't have where to go. They simply don't have where to go. It's Russians who came to Ukraine. It's Russians who wants to destroy everything, but moreover to take most valuables, the best values that human can have. It's the family and it's the free democratic values that's also many leaders saying they in support with. And that's why we're here. That's why we're here to advocate and remind the world that Russia will not stop. That Russia have this pattern of destruction, killing, completely erasing Ukrainian grounds because they can't take Ukraine just simply. The liberation of Ukraine in North a week ago have proven that Russia was so upset that they went to do more atrocious acts and destroy Ukrainian infrastructure. They shoot missiles in Kharkiv power station where there was a power outage for many hours, nothing worked, no underground anything. And the next day they launched the missile strikes on very important infrastructure in Kryvyi Rih. It's a water reservoir, quite huge, and they damaged the dam. So the nearby, in close proximity, houses and everything was simply flooded. That's what Russia doing. As we speak, that's what Russia did, what we've seen, and the months ago when the war started. And they will continue to do so, and especially if the world not have unity of action and purpose. Proliferation of green energy is vital to stop purchasing Russian energy and to stop be dependent on Russian energy supply. Total embargo on Russian oil.
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 Total embargo on Russian oil. Total embargo on Russian oil.
Total embargo on Russian oil.
Total embargo on Russian oil.
Total embargo on Russian oil. Total embargo on Russian oil. Total embargo on Russian oil.
Also, among the other things that the world can do with their unity of action and purpose is to finally impose the sanctions that will work. Not to count on the package of sanctions they already imposed, because we already seen how Russia clearly can bypass them, how Russia keep evading them, how Russia purchasing things through Iran and through other countries that are able to trade with the West and European. We've seen that Russia bypassing all the sanctions that the Western leaders and European leaders have imposed. The unity of action needed so they can impose the stronger more powerful sanctions on Russia, on sanctions that will clearly work, and on sanctions that will work like we've been promised they will work, on sanctions that will suffocate Russian war machine, on sanctions that will suffocate any thinking of Kremlin evil to do anything more in Ukraine and to do anything more in the future, not just against Ukraine, but against any other neighboring countries. So we call in the world more sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia. More sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia. More sanctions on Russia. More sanctions on Russia.
More sanctions on Russia. More sanctions on Russia.
When they announced a partial mobilization, we've seen how such a called supportive supportive Russian nations was fleeing Russia just because they didn't want to be conscripted, just because they have sat on their backsides for last 7 months, didn't do anything about their government, anti-democratic, autocratic government, but now they're trying to flee Russia. We've seen we've seen the queuing all along Russia, Georgia borders, European Finland borders. But what fascinates me, what makes my heart beating, and what makes me more pain inside myself, as many of you, is that reading the subject that Germany prepared to take Russian refugees while Germany postponing supplying of promised weapons, while Germany postponing and delaying supplying of tanks and required weapons for Ukraine. Recalling the rest of the world, reminding them on their legal and moral duties to arm Ukraine as you promised.
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 Arm Ukraine as you promised. Arm Ukraine as you promised. Arm Ukraine as you promised. Arm Ukraine as you promised.
Arm Ukraine as you promised.
Arm Ukraine as you promised.
Arm Ukraine as you promised.
Arm Ukraine as you promised.
Arm Ukraine as you promised. Arm Ukraine as you promised.
And this unity of action, if purpose, should be able to deal with that issue as well. Should be able to deal with the issues that some other countries are clearly trying to not lose their face in front of Kremlin evil, while hesitating on how supporting Ukraine, while watching how Ukraine suffering. That small help that already have been provided to Ukraine, and watching how Ukraine fighting on its own against such an asymmetric dominance of power, it's morally and legally untenable. It's untenable for them. It's a shame for them. And we, as nation, we, as a free, not indifferent human, care about that. We care about that and remember what they promised us, but we also care and remember, we also care about all the soldiers that are dying in Ukraine just to protect their homes, to protect their enemies against, just to protect their families just to defend their countries against the enemy on this unnecessary, unprovoked, premeditated Russian war in Ukraine. On this note, ladies and gentlemen, we must not forget all those that have died while defending Ukraine. And yesterday I was ashamed that I forgot to mention, but I mentioned right at the end with someone else's help. But today I will say what I was supposed to say to you yesterday at this time. One of the volunteers, alike myself, alike yourselves, alike like anybody standing in the green tent or any volunteers that you see around here, Victor, who helped Ukraine since 2014, who was working as a volunteer back in 2014, helping sending a lot of packages, helping to send in all the humanitarian help, all the ratios, all the equipment to soldiers. He have joined after the volunteering work and further volunteering work in Ukraine. He met American friend and he had to join on his voluntary basis. He had to join Ukrainian armed forces to fight against Russian enemy. His nickname was Prytanec. You can see his last interview with Butусов on the YouTube if anyone haven't seen it yet. But why I'm mentioning, I'm not encouraging anyone to subscribe to anyone. But I'm mentioning just that video, it's just to watch the man, the way he speaks, watch the man, the way he cares, watch the man that he left peaceful country, he left his family, he had everything what human can have to live freely, independently, like many people enjoying around this country now. And but he cared to the end. And in that interview, you can hear his words. You can hear his words. When the Butусов asks him, what's your plans for the future? He said, my only plan at the moment is to get Russian away from Ukrainian territories. And then I can plan my future. Because while Russian freaks on Ukrainian territories, none of the Ukrainians can have a plans. Many people going to work in the morning without knowing whether they can return back home. Many people going to shop, they don't know whether they be able to return home. Many kids plunging to their families, plunging to their parents every day on every air alert siren because they don't know whether it's their last minute or they be able to see future of this world. This is the situation in Ukraine now, ladies and gentlemen. This is not the thing that many just around the world watching on the TV and listening on the radio. That's the reality. That's where the curtain of indifference drops. That's where the curtain drops, and that's the reality. So on a note of remembering that, especially that guy, but not also, I just mentioning him, I put in him at the moment because, like I say, I forgot to tell that yesterday in a way I wanted to tell, and to memorize him. He left everything what he could, what he had, and he joined the armed forces just because he cared so much about Ukraine. On 15th of September, when his battalion was shelled by Russian, he had the call to come with the team and evacuate the wounded person that's been under Russian attacks. And while on the way to evacuate them, they were shelled as well, and the victor suddenly was killed. We had the memorial service in the church yesterday evening, and on that note, along with Victor, this is his story. But there is many other stories like Victor. many other people just dying in Ukraine, defending their homeland, or just peacefully living without knowing where the Russian freaks missile will end, and many of them dying. Hence why, to pay the tributes to all of those, every time we are here, we must allow ourselves a minute of silence. A minute of silence for those that died defending their homeland. Hence why we're having a minute of silence right now, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you. Eternal memory and eternal glory to all of those that died defending Ukraine. Слава Україні! Слава Україні! Слава Україні! Слава нації! Слава нації! Слава нації! Україна! 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 Захисникам України тричі! Всім загиблим, яких ми пам'ятаємо і завжди згадуємо, всіх тих, хто захищає нас, захищав нашу країну до кінця, до скільки міг тричі. We will continue to address the world. We will continue to advocate the world and remind them that it's only them, it's only on their responsibility to hold Russian Kremlin evil accountable for all atrocities that his soldiers, that his people, that his brainless, morally bankrupt nation have done in Ukraine. This unity of action, important and purpose needs to deal with that as soon as possible. Need to stop the end, need to put the end on this existential threat that Russia posing on the rest of the world, on the crisis that Russia created on the rest of the countries, but their hybrid war, but their by weaponizing the energy and weaponizing the food. We call, we tell, we ask, we advocate, we address, and we tell the world that the biggest deterrent, it's the weapons, it's the promised weapons, because Russia understands it's only power of force, and Russia using this. Russia shamelessly have been in nuclear power plants in Zaporizhia, and then initially by seizing the Chernobyl, they blackmailing the world. They blackmailing the world not just with weaponizing the food, not just with weaponizing the energy, but they also blackmailing the world with its nuclear disaster. While the war at the moment located in Ukraine and have its borders, when nuclear power plant explodes, and the biggest nuclear power plant in Europe is the Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, the plum of nuclear cloud will not have borders. Just for those who recall Chernobyl, just for those who recall what's happened in Chernobyl back then, you can see how far the nuclear cloud can travel and what repercussion will be for the nations in direction which that nuclear cloud is travel. International agency, International Atomic Agency have visited a plant 3 weeks ago, but as per their report, as per what they've done, they haven't done anything. All they done is the chatting, talking, what we already knew. What we already knew, that they have to implement the rules and law or sanctions against Russia that will make that plant Ukrainian as it was before. Just the simple message of that International Atomic Agency was to get rid of Russian, that continue disturbing the peace, torturing the workers in the power plant, but moreover putting the blame to the Ukrainian side while blackmailing the world of its nuclear disaster. During the partial mobilization, during the announcement of partial mobilization and subsequent sham referendums that they had in the Zaporizhzhia region, in Kherson region, Donetsk and Luhansk region, those referendums were called like a door-to-door military man with a gun, with a piece of paper, that the people had no choice but to vote to stay in Russia. And Russia now blackmailing the world that if anyone will possess on their territory, because they let to think themselves while having veto in United Nations, they let to think that it's theirs now because the world cannot do anything about them. The world cannot make profound, substantial actions against them. And those actions, as we spoke already, those actions are only in substantial support of Ukraine. When the war began, I just remind all of you, everyone was saying that Ukraine will not stand for more than 3 days, and Russia was prepared to take Ukraine just within 3 days. But Ukrainian soldiers have proven, Ukrainian united people, Ukrainian nation have proven that in unity is power. Ukrainian nation have proven that if you stand in unity, you can deal with a lot of problems, you can deal with a lot of issues, but furthermore, you can deal even with asymmetric dominance of power as Russian Federation. But all it requires is unwavering and continuous support of the free democratic leaders that have a right and have a choice to do so now. They have a legal and moral right to substantially support Ukraine. The cost of supporting Ukraine is imposed on everyone. It's everyone's duty to stand on the side of light, to stand on the side of truth. That cost, there will be a cost, and that cost of the sanction, that is the military support cost, economical support cost, humanitarian support cost, supporting the people that flee Ukraine now just because Russia took their properties and killed their families. Many people will not return to the places where they lived, where they were born. And that cost is for everyone. But let me remind you one thing. While they counting pennies, how they helping Ukrainian accounting casualties. This is the huge difference. This is the huge difference between two things. Because Ukrainians on daily basis counting the casualties of innocent people that Russia just trying to extinguish. And we said, we asked world that they legal and international obligation to continually unwavering supporting, to provide continuous and unwavering support to Ukraine. And that support we've been promised will be coming. That support we have been promised will be continuous. That support, they told us they will send the weapons we need. But now we read, oh, they will take the Russian, some of the countries will take Russian refugees first, and they delay on promise supplying the weapons. Where are the weapons? Where are the weapons?
Where are the weapons?
Where are the weapons?
Where are the weapons?
Where are the weapons?
Where are the weapons? Where are the weapons? Where are the weapons? Where are the weapons?
Where are the weapons?
Where are the weapons? Where are the weapons? Where are the weapons?
Where are the weapons?
Where are the weapons? Where are the weapons?
All
Where are the weapons?
we, all of you here, unfortunately, we're all facing the same news. You know, we're facing the bad news, we're facing the good news, and we're trying to live with that. We're trying to digest them. We're trying to overcome the bad news, and we're trying to find the solutions. I want to mention the exchange of the Azov defenders that took place 4 days ago, where more than 200 Azov defenders were finally exchanged. And I want to mention on the good side, on the good news, if you've seen the pictures of the pregnant Azov medic, Mariana, I think she called, like I say, don't judge me if I didn't say the name right, but her name is Mariana. She was pregnant and she was in Russian captivity since April, and she finally was exchanged few days ago, heavily pregnant. She was worrying to fall in labor while she was transported during the exchange. But the good news is today at 4 o'clock, 4 Ukrainian PM, 4 PM in Ukraine, she gave the birth to the little girl. So that's congratulations. She went a long way, but the hope she had never let her down. The prayers, the people prayed for her, and the hope that everything will be fine. There will be end for it. There will be everything in the end. We will overcome. We will deal with. And there is a new life in Ukrainians, so like I say, with our spirit and energy, all situations were her. But let's not forget, there was more than 200 Azov defenders in Mariupol. 1,800 defenders were what they call surrender, but it's not surrender. They gave up the Azov plant mill on assurances of United Nations International Committee of Red Cross that if they let go from Azov mill plant, they will be promised of free, unharmed way, and that they be able to leave and return to their families. False flag attack in Alanivka, and you know, the premeditated torture of many of them clearly shown that Russia have violated Geneva Convention. Russia haven't looked after, Russia haven't provided necessary care to the prisoners of war. The guy, Mykola, who had the hand broken, you also seen him on the picture. He's missing about 4 centimeters of the bone now on his hand. He came, if you see the pictures before the captivity and after captivity, he came with the loss of weight of more than 30%. There was no necessary care for prisoners of war, but they shouldn't be classified as prisoners of war because someone from the top rank, United Nations and the Red Cross have promised them, have gave assurances that they will return in harm, but in fact they just been given to Russian hands, to Russian freaks as a prisoners of war, and that not even proper care, not even proper food that they have. Well, it seems in a way they lost the weight, clearly shown that Russia violates everything. Russia even violates the rules that they ratify themselves. Russia violates any international laws or Geneva Convention. Hence why, let's not forget the rest of Azov defenders. We don't know at what state they are there now. We don't know where are they. But the thing is, we have to remember ourselves, to remind the world that they are there, to remind the world that if they've been given assurances, world should stand for that, and world should provide any necessary help to help them, to release them. Hence why we call to free Azov defenders now.
Free Azov defenders now. Free Azov defenders now. Free Azov defenders now.
Free Azov defenders now.
Free Azov defenders now.
Free Azov defenders now.
Free Azov defenders now.
Free Azov defenders now.
Free Azov defenders now. Free Azov defenders now. Free Azov defenders now.
Free Azov defenders now.
Free Azov defenders now. Free Azov defenders now. Free Azov defenders now. Free Azov defenders now.
You know, the biggest defeat that we can have is to fall into state of indifference. Is to fall into state of indifference, what's happening around us, what's happening to the people like us. Many of the soldiers we don't know on the front line, but for whom we know, we can understand at what conditions they have to fight. With the longer nights now, with the colder weather now, they are not giving up. They keep fighting with what they have been given. We are into winter time now, which is much harder for everyone, which is much harder for them to be just in open atmosphere 24/7 without proper sleep, without proper food, without proper anything. People around the world, around the free world, people like us in Britain have to understand. And I'm not saying to any one of you, I'm just shouting out loud as, as if this energy might reach someone. Because when I read on some posters, they saying, well, I can't go to rally because it's nothing creative there. What creativeness you need at the rallies? I can't go to rally because they seem to reiterate in themselves exactly. It's the war in Ukraine. Hence why we are addressing the world with the same message. They saying with the creativeness, they blaming for reiterating themselves while enjoying themselves in the restaurants and dancing every night on Saturday, Friday and Sunday with forgetting what exactly happening to the people the same as they are. This message is simple, and it's message for them as for the rest of the nation to remember that Ukraine needs the support like nothing else. World, support Ukraine!
World, support Ukraine! World, support Ukraine! World, support Ukraine! World, support Ukraine! World, support Ukraine! World, support Ukraine! World, support Ukraine! World, support Ukraine! World, support Ukraine! World, support Ukraine! World, support Ukraine! World, support Ukraine! World, support Ukraine!
I'm going to sort of wrap this up for Sasha, but can we just give him a round of applause, please? Because he's been talking for 2 days and it's really challenging. Thank you, Sasha. Slava Ukraini!
Thank you, Anya. I just want to remind all of you that we're going to have our rallies. We're going to continue to have our rallies now as usual. We have paid tribute on the death of the Queen Elizabeth II, and now we are back to have our rallies as usually on Wednesday 6 p.m., 8 p.m., Saturday 4 p.m., 6 p.m., and Sunday 3 p.m., 5 p.m. opposite 10 Downing Street where we are now. And I'll see you all on Wednesday. I must run and leave you. I'll leave you to Anya.
І так, ще раз, слава Україні! Слава нації! Україна! Тричі, героям України всім! Слава! 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 So I'm going to continue on the subject that Alexander started about recent prisoners exchange, and about the fact that unfortunately not all of our prisoners have been released. I'm sure many of you have read the information and the horrible stories about the condition of our heroes who have been released. They've been tortured, they've been starved, they've been beaten, they're dehydrated, many of them lost 30% of their body weight and undergoing recovery. I'm sure all of you have seen the horrific photo of one of our defenders with a broken arm that is missing 4 centimeters of its bone right now after Russian captivity. No medicine, no help whatsoever. And we still need to remember that so many of our defenders, men and women, are still in captivity, both from Azov and not from Azov. Medics, paramedics, even civilians who are being subjected to Russian brutality, to their complete lack of understanding of being human. We need to remember about them. We need to pray for them. We need to ask the world to release them. We need to remember and know their names, because if their names are known to the public, they're more likely to get released. This is what happened with the guys from Azov. They were world famous. Their faces were in media. We were doing these rallies. I'm sure that every single one of us has actually contributed to their release. And we need to continue doing so with the rest of them. We need to know their names. We need to know their faces. We need to publish on social media. We need to appeal to the civilized world to release our hostages, our prisoners of war, and especially civilians. Because this is not humane and this is not right. So, world, stop Russia. 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 World, stop Russia.
World, stop Russia! World, stop Russia!
I am sure that many of you have heard about the 5 British men who were recently also released from Russian captivity. I read that a lot of people wrote to local MPs of those military men, of those British military men, and asked to facilitate their release. This is one of the means, one of the tools that we all need to be aware of, that we can use to actually help prisoners of war, both British and non-British. Please continue writing to your local MPs. Please continue signing petitions. This is something that you can do to help those who are in captivity. In addition to talking about this, shouting about this, coming to this protest, every single one of us can make a difference and save lives. We need to remember this. If you stay for freedom, stay with Ukraine. If you stay for freedom, stay with Ukraine. This is my message. Secondly, I'm sure that a lot of you have heard about Izium, which is something that happened only recently. The atrocities of Izium, over 500 people dead in a mass grave, is just one example. We do not know what Russia did in other territories that have not been defended, that have not been released. We need to remember about those people, and we need to continue appealing to the civilized world to arm Ukraine so that our defenders continue retaking those territories, so that there are no more deaths of civilians, so that Izium, Bucha, Irpin, Mariupol, Kherson, so that that does not happen again. Arm Ukraine now! 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 Arm Ukraine now!
Arm Ukraine now! Arm Ukraine now! Arm Ukraine now! Arm Ukraine now!
So, Alexander has obviously mentioned that from now on we will continue this protest on a regular basis once again. Next weekend, we are planning to have a demonstration with the girls about Izium and about the atrocities that happened there. So I just encourage all of you to come, to see, to participate, to bring relevant posters and other materials, and to spread information on your social media, to tell your friends, to encourage more people to come to these protests and to these rallies. We need to continue educating the world, telling them about what is actually happening in Ukraine. People need to know that the war is not over, and that the more we discover, the more atrocities we discover of Russia and how inhumane Russia is. We need to encourage trial for Russia. Russia has breached every single treaty, every single convention. There should be a trial on Russia like there was a trial on the Nazis in Nuremberg. Russia needs to be tried for all the war crimes. Trial for Russia! 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 Trial for Russia!
Trial for Russia! Trial for Russia!
Of course, unfortunately, there is no such trial that can properly punish Russians for what they have been doing. But unlike Russians in Ukraine, we are humane, and we recognize international law and human rights. So this is what Ukraine wants. Ukraine wants Russia to be punished in the court of law, and Ukraine wants to win. Ukraine does not want to continue this war, and the whole world needs to help us. I'm sure everybody has heard of or seen the most recent video released by Putin, Russia's tyrant, who is now gone so mad and he's threatening the entire world with nuclear weapons. And the world is silent. The world has let Putin annex Crimea. The world has let Putin take Donbass and Luhansk and torture their people and children. The world has let him do anything he wanted. They let Georgia happen. They let Chechnya happen. They let him use chemical weapons in Syria. I'm sure Putin has even less care for Ukrainian children and for children of the world. Nothing will ever stop this mad dictator who is clearly out of his mind, who does not have a heart, and who will continue no matter what. The world should not be scared of his so-called non-bluff, as he calls it, when talking about nuclear weapons. I have a response to this. A response is by our soldiers. They published a post on social media and they said, "We joined the army because we were scared. The world is scared of nuclear weapons, but we are not scared of anything because now we are in the army and we are defending our home. We are light and Russia is evil. We should not be scared of evil because light will prevail no matter what. The world should not be scared of the mad dictator who is threatening it. The world should be light and the world should fight Russia. Fight Russia together. 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 I want every one of you to know that you are making a tremendous difference by saying this and by coming here and by encouraging everybody to do so as well. Like I said, only all together we will win, and our soldiers, our brave defenders, our heroes, they need to see that they're not doing this for nothing. They need to know that we've been standing here for them just like they stand for us. They need to know that we are fighting for them just like they're fighting for the entire Europe that has been silent, that has not provided us with adequate support as of the day. Of course, we're grateful for the support that we've received so far from Britain and other countries. But now that Russia is mobilizing its soldiers and is threatening to occupy even more territories and is threatening to put even more soldiers into independent Ukraine and God knows where, the world finally needs to wake up and respond. Ukraine does not have enough troops to take all Russian ones, to take all the mobilized Russian troops. The world needs to respond now. World, wake up! 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 It took quite a while for the world to recognize that Hitler was evil. And now the history is repeating itself because the world does not adequately respond to Putin's threat of nuclear weapons, to Putin's mobilization, to Putin's atrocities. The world does not give an adequate response. The world needs to wake up because it may be too late. Now, everybody knows about how Russia took 30% of Ukrainian territory and how our brave soldiers were taking that territory. They have been extremely brave, they've been strong, but they also need our help in basic things such as uniforms, helmets, bulletproof vests, and things like that. Because once your helmet has been shot at, you can't reuse it, so we need another one. Our soldiers are quite modest. They do not ask for much because they're truly brave and they're true heroes. But we shouldn't take them for granted and we should offer them our help regardless. We should continue donating. We should continue supporting the Ukrainian army. We should be asking our friends who serve in the military or friends of our friends what they need and continue our support. Now that the winter is coming, they all need proper winter uniforms and support gear. Our donations can literally save their lives. and they need them because they're out there and we're here. So please continue donating to Ukrainian army. There are many ways to donate. You can donate via Tommy or in any of the buckets. You can buy things from Ukrainian tents just there. And you can also subscribe to Ukrainian Support Ukraine donation link, where you can donate on a monthly basis, whatever amount you choose. Even if it's just £1 is a pair of warm socks for a Ukrainian soldier. So think about that and donate to Ukrainian army. 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 Donate to Ukrainian army.
Donate to Ukrainian army.
Donate to Ukrainian army.
Donate to Ukrainian army.
Donate to Ukrainian army.
Donate to Ukrainian army.
Donate to Ukrainian army.
Donate to Ukrainian army.
Donate to Ukrainian army.
Donate to Ukrainian army.
Donate to Ukrainian army.
Donate to Ukrainian army.
So, just to wrap this up, because all of you have been here for a while, the key message is to continue supporting Ukraine, to continue donating, to continue spreading the information, and to come here next week on Wednesday, Saturday, and Sunday. On Saturday, we'll have a special performance for Izum. Слава Україні! Слава нації! Україна! And now I will play Ukrainian anthem.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've just heard some sad news. Alison has
And I'm British. I am only part-time Belarusian. Still, I think people will come back. I came here last week, and there was no one here because it had been cancelled for Queen Elizabeth. Whose phone is that?
When the someone make recording,
Whose phone is it?
Потому что начинают специалисты. Да, для меня
Нет,
I was doing this in the year sort of 2000 to 2010. No, we had a clever plan. So our real partners were rights activists, but our official partners were the judicial training. And so we didn't say we were talking about we would talk about common problems, justice in the UK and Belarus. And also they weren't directly concerned about European human rights because has anyone left a phone? There's a phone here. Has anyone left a telephone? There's an iPhone here.
Oi, dėdė. Kiekvieną norą. Nu. Ir eini su mama į Pimliku ir sakai, čia mamos pasas, aš lietuvis, duokit man pasą.
Nu jo, tai ašgi dar ne visiškai lietuvis. Aš nesupratau, nes mes Lietuvoje norėjom naudoti pasą.
Ir ką Lietuvoje pasakė?
Atėjom ir pasakė, kad tik mano sesuo gali gauti.
Taip, sesuo. Kur tavo sesuo?
Kur mano sesuo? Ne. Ne, bet jinai tik jinai galėjo gauti, nes jinai gimė 8 metais.
O jinai gavo?
Ne, nes mesgi pagalvojom, tai kokia prasme, jeigu pas mane, pas mano kitoj sesuo negalima pasą savo gauti, tai kam jai pasas.
Lietuviškas pasas yra labai geras dalykas.
Nu tai
labai geras.
Tai mums nelabai reikia, pas mane yra dar ir kanadiečiškas pasas.
Nu jeigu yra kanadiečių, tada kitas.
Nu jo.
O britiškas pasas?
Nėra. Tai kanadietiškas, ukrainietiškas, amerikietiškas ir rusas.
Turi amerikietišką pasą?
Jo, aš ten gyvenau.
O kanadietiškas dėl ko?
Nes aš ten gyvenau 8 metais.
Opa.
8 metai.
Ir dar rusų pasas yra? Dėl ko?
Nes būsim pas mane ten. Per mūsų mamą ir pas mūsų mama lietuvė, bet ir rusą, nes mūsų močiutė gyvent Rusijoje. Nu jo, sudėtinga labai.
Taip, jeigu mama turi lietuvišką pasą, tu gali padaryti savo lietuvišką. Tam Pimliko, šitas gimė čia, bet turi lietuvišką pasą. Dėl to, kad aš turiu.
Jo, pas jūs, o pas žmona ar draugė yra?
Ne, jinai ne lietuvė.
Ne lietuvė, ne iš čia.
Iš Latvijos.
Iš Latvijos?
Taip.
Tai pas jį ir latviškas pasas?
Darysim latvišką. Darysim. Tai tau reikia lietuviško pasą tikrai. Bus 5 pasas, ar ne?
5 bus, bet toj pas mane rusiškai
nebebus.
Nebebus, mes toj reikės, nes tenagi šitas conscription, kaip jis vadinasi lietuviškai.
Aha. Gerai, įdomu.
O jūs kiekvieno mitingo ateinat?
Sekmadieniais bandau. Jo,
Tai
sekmadieniais.
aš irgi ateinu. Nes tu mokslais prasidės. Tai aš vėl sekmadieniais.
Tu su mama lietuviškai šneki?
Jo, su mama kalba lietuviškai, su tėveliu ukrainietiškai.
O
Tai
su seserim?
Susirim kalbam rusiškai. Ar rusiškai?
Tai labai gerai, man labai tu patinki.
Nu, o jūs tada kaip su vaiku? Tada
Su juo rusiškai.
rusiškai, bet ir lietuviškai žino, ne?
Jo, mes einam į lietuvišką mokyklą
Aš irgi.
šeštadieniais. Tai bandom po truputį jį pralaušim ir šnekės irgi lietuviškai.
Jis dabar rusiškai daug.
Angliškai geriau negu rusiškai netgi, taip.
Tai jūs dar reiškia, gaunasi rusiškai, lietuviškai, angliškai ir latviškai turbūt.
Ne, Latvijai ten nieks nežino, neatsimena, nesupranta, bet turės irgi 3-4 pasus. Irgi darysiu jam latvių ir ukrainiečių.
Ir ukrainiečių.
Bet ukrainiečių labai sunku padaryti, nes negali užsiregistruoti tenai. Ten nėra vietos. Čia ateiti aš negaliu, nes nėra vietos.
Nėra vietos užregistruotis.
Jo, ambasada ukrainiečių Anglijai. Parašau, noriu pasą vaikui. Sako, nėra vietos. Nėra vietos ir čia.
Wow.
Taip, va.
Nu tai pas mane irgi šitas pasas, bet čia ukrainietiškas, bet jis 19 jau pasibaigė. Ir aš dar ne šitą.
Simeon?
Samen. Jo.
Samen.
O kaip jūs?
Віталіюс.
Будеш на наступний сьогодні? Математикою. Будеш знаєш.
Ви в Чаниках, так?
В українській школі. Так. А чай, хочеш з нами?
Я не можу, я зараз вдома.
А ти хворий.
А я хворію трохи.
Ну, як можеш, на другу неділю підійдемо, то буде перший день, і так буде багато нових людей. Ти починаєш Ми його кличемо на танці.
На танці?
Ви теж як хочете. Нам хлопці треба. Ми до всіх
Другий раз.
постійно на танці кличемо всіх.
Ну, я так думаю, щоб...
Ти починаєш університету, я знаю, що буде Freshers Week. Я вже чуть-чуть, у нього Freshers Free.
Ой-ой-ой.
Я мала десь місяць. Що ти там міксувала? Це ще було?
Ну, ще буде, ще тиждень.
Пудра? Яка пудра? Ні, ще пудра. А, ще пудра.
Я ще думаю, бо в мене це є, що футболом буду займатися, я ще...
Ну, подумай. Це є комітмент. Але просто починається, всі будуть того самого багато людей. Те, що ти прийшов і там всі World.
Так, ну я ж ще трошки...
Флаг наш. Все наше.